I will get straight to the point. Modern video games have a problem with how they tell their stories. It's not the quality of the stories that is the problem, it's how the game delivers it to the players. Let me explain.
Do not be sorry. Be better.
To make it simple, the modern gaming storytelling method is mostly not good. Developers use mostly cutscenes to convey their stories, instead of using video games' strongest form of storytelling. I call it gameplay-focused storytelling. Gaming is an interactive medium, and it should be that way. Telling a story with mostly cutscenes in a video game is not wrong.
You want my children? Take them! I have the instrument to make more!
But there are more effective ways to approach it. But first, I need to explain what is gameplay-focused storytelling. Games using this method to tell their stories will have a few things in common. First, it has interesting and well-done gameplay, which can keep the player hooked. Next, the developers know how to mix the gameplay and the story told by cutscenes, quick-time events, and dialogues together, making them support each other. And last but most important, it tells a story through sections of the gameplay. It may not be the entire story, just a few important parts, but that's all it takes. Some may mistake gameplay-focused storytelling for interactive storytelling. At first, they sound quite similar. Playing the game, discovering its environment is interacting, right? It's a bit different from each other. You see, the most distinct thing of interactive storytelling is the branching. With this method, the player creates their own stories set in a world created by the developers. You can see this in many RPG games like the Witcher series or Mountain Blade. Gameplay-focused storytelling, on the other hand, can tell a linear predetermined story. But the way the game delivers the story is vastly different. I think the best way to explain it to you is by some examples, and I have just the right games for you. If you're familiar with Kratos, the god of war, I'm sure you know his old adventures in ancient Greece and his fight against the gods of Olympus. And in those old games, there are moments which are superior to the new ones. Before I go any further, I would like to say that I'm not talking about the quality of the story or the story itself. I'm talking about the way how the story is delivered. I have to say this before someone goes off in the comments about how the new God of War games are an incredible masterpiece. I like them too, but I want to point out how they could have learned from the old games. Also, warning, there will be some spoilers about the old God of War games. Both games use cutscenes and quick-time events, but I gotta say, there are no parts in the new God of War games that can match these two sections in the old games. The first one is in the original God of War game. In the final boss fight against Ares, after the player defeated the God of War in the first phase, Kratos is sucked into an illusion world. In this realm, he finds his old home with his wife Lysandra and his daughter Calliope. Their reunion is cut short because they were attacked, and the enemy, surprisingly, is an army of Kratos, or at least his copies. The players now has to defend Kratos' families from a horde of himself. This part, in my opinion, is genius. Let me explain. In this fight, alongside your own health bar, Kratos' families also has one, and the only way to restore it is to press the circle button, making Kratos hug them in a protective, covering manner. This action also drains Kratos' life, so you have to balance between keeping yourself alive and Kratos' family. The beauty of this part is the circle button. In the game, the circle button is the death blow move. You use it on monsters that have been knocked out to finish them and restore your HP. But in this instance, the player can use the same button to keep Kratos' health points away and restore the lives of his family. And you have to do that while fighting a horde of Kratos clones. I love how you can see his suffering, his guilt, his rage, just by gameplay. The cutscenes added were used to enhance the gameplay, both mixed together to create one of the best fights in the whole series. The way the game perfectly blends gameplays and stories into an emotional and epic boss battle makes me love it. The second part, which some of you may have guessed correctly which one it is from God of War Chains of Olympus. In this game, there is a section where Kratos travels to the underworld. he found his daughter, Calliope, or at least her soul. She resides in the Elysium Field, a place for the pure, the heroic, and the virtuous. To enter the plane, Kratos must give up his powers, and he did it without a second thought. In the field, he reunites with his daughter, but the reunion is short-lived. Persephone has revealed that she was tricking Kratos, using his desire to take away his powers, the only thing that can stop her from destroying the world. That would mean the Elysium Plane and Calliope's soul would also perish. Kratos, desperately trying to protect his daughter, charged at the goddess, only to be easily knocked away. He realized the harsh truth. The only way to save the world and his daughter's soul is to leave her, regain his powers, and defeat the goddess of the underworld. Then enters one of, if not the most heartbreaking moments in all of the God of War games. Kratos, with all his might, has to do the one thing he may not be able to do: push his beloved daughter away from him. It was a struggle for both him and the player, because you have to smash the circle button, the same one that you use to deliver devastating death blows to your enemies, to push away the one person left who Kratos wants to be with. All while Calliope is crying her eyes out, begging you to stop it, to stay with her. Everything about it was brilliant, and the fact that the scene used the version of the theme "The End Begins." Which is mostly used in intense battles, further proves to the player that this moment is the hardest battle Kratos has ever had. It's both a mental and physical struggle for him. After a few attempts, Kratos finally pushes Calliope away. Then he proceeds to kill the innocent souls in the Elysium Field to regain his power. I actually love how the game can make such a scene where we can see a both powerful and vulnerable Kratos at the same time. And all of that achieved by an impactful, painfully gut-wrenching quick-time event, with gameplay right after it, not a cutscene. And now you're wondering, how can game developers implement this in a weird, inefficient and manipulative way, even creating conflicts between the gameplay and stories? I can give you a few examples. The most recent I can recall is The Last of Us Part 2. In this game, you play as two characters: Ellie, a young girl on a quest for revenge, and Abby, a young woman who is trying to find purpose in her life and facing the consequences of her actions. When you play as Ellie, you, the player, have to go across the infested wasteland of America to find Abby, the murderer of Joe, the father figure of Ellie. On her way, Ellie has to face many kinds of enemies, from looters, soldiers, zombie looters, zombie soldiers, dogs to Fat Geralt.
Thank the gods for
Fat Geralt.
and
His memes.
And sometimes when you kill the enemies, the others will shout out their fallen comrade's name in anguish, anger, and fear. At first, you will recognize this as an attempt for the developers and writers to somehow make you feel something when shooting a strange soldier you've never met. It's like there's an invisible figure whispering in your ears. Do you feel bad now, huh? You kill someone with friends, lovers, and a life of their own. What do you feel now? It would have been kinda cool if not for one problem. The most entertaining part of that game, of many games, the part where you spend most of your time interacting with, is the gameplay. And I have to tell you this, The Last of Us Part 2 gameplay is fun. You have a wide range of tools at your disposal to take out your enemies, and some can be very creative with them. Then, when the cutscenes come in, you get sections of Ellie basically going through anxiety attacks. She feels disgusted at herself for killing people. She does not like doing it. Ellie looks like she's trying to find another way to get to Abby without having to kill those people. The cutscenes and the gameplay become conflicted with each other. On one side, the player can choose to create a scenario of their own with the gameplay, creating their own journey and story through the gameplay. But the cutscenes feel like another story being told separately from the one told by the gameplay. This is the manipulative and inefficient way of storytelling I was talking about. Of course, you can choose to do a stealth gameplay walkthrough. You can play without killing almost anyone in the gameplay. Not so sure about the cutscenes. If you choose to only kill the enemies the game forces you to kill, and in the cutscenes and if you're sick of it, then the only way to play the game properly, to go hand in hand with the cutscenes, is to do a pacifist no-kill run. Which is possible, by the way. But if that's the case, the developers should have created a punish system for killing more enemies, like more troops in the next areas with more weapons, or they are easier to be alerted, or make Ellie shakes her hand while in idle animation. Instead, they create a really fun gameplay with amazing executions, animations, which rewards you with an amazing time if you kill your enemies creatively, while hearing Ellie mocking her enemies.
Oh, right there! Took out your friend!
Does not sound like someone scared of killing to me. The game could have worked so much better if the developers have added a punish system that reacts to the player's actions, as I mentioned earlier. The key component here is the gameplay. But how can developers create great games with amazing gameplay that tell the stories within them? Let me introduce you to a game that did a phenomenal job at it. That game is Journey, a beautiful indie adventure game where you play as the traveler. The player character was a rough sketch of personhood, a figure wearing robes with pointy, angular legs, no arms, no revealed gender, and no facial detail beyond its eyes. You venture across the vast dunes of an ancient world, discovering its secrets. Explore multiple locations alone or with companions, which are other players. The game tells the story of its world entirely by interacting with the world around you and the players going on this journey alongside you. You can fly across large dunes of sand, read ancient glyphs about civilizations long gone, or simply enjoy the company of another traveler on the long trip. Other players can also help you solve puzzles, get new abilities, or guide you through more difficult sections. The game has no inventory system, no player name or game tag, no resources to compete for. The game does not have a chat feature or emotes, or any other way for the players to directly communicate with each other. You need to somewhat interact with the environment to guide others. At the end of the game, you will be revealed the name tags of the players who have been on a journey with you. It's a game with a story that you discover along the way by interacting with the environment and other players. In other words, playing the games. From that, many people can feel related to the story in some miraculously strange way, like the story of the other side after death. The way the game approached the story, the gameplay, and many of its amazing features made the game one of the best in 2012 and proceeded to receive several awards next year. Journey is the kind of game that you have to play to fully experience it. The play part, the engagement part, is the most important point here. How would you approach it? How do you tell the story by the game's most powerful tool? And how did you guide the player through the experience without making it feel forced and manipulative? This is where you know your game has succeeded as a game, not a movie, not a novel, a game. Video games are a unique and amazing art form. It has the power of gameplay-focused storytelling, which few other mediums possess. So the more game developers use it by implementing it into the gameplay, the better and more unique that game would be. Of course, the quality of the game's story will depend on the premise and the story itself too. But the way a story is delivered is equally important for an interactive medium like video games. If you want to tell a story by only cutscenes, a movie would be a better idea. What do you think about this? Should games focus more on telling the story through gameplay, instead of relying on beautifully rendered cutscenes? Let me know in the comment sections. And don't forget to check out my other videos about anime and manga as well. That's it for today's video. Thanks for watching. And as always, take care friends.